Well,
So I've got to be nervous now because the recorder's on.
Well, Gribbin writes. He used to write for New Scientist to be a journalist, and he used to write to Nature in the 70s about the Jupiter effect destroying Los Angeles in 1982 that failed. Then he wrote all about quantum mechanics. Now I think he just writes books with his wife, and he's at University, I think, of Sussex or something, isn't it?
He writes books about are there a million other universes, that kind of thing, doesn't he? Within a black hole.
He doesn't skirt that too widely, but he's written Stardust, which is the idea that about the Big Bang. Not the Big Bang. Stardust is about stars, supernova explosions, creating uranium and heavy elements, whereas the Big Bang made the light elements and stuff. So he writes astronomy and cosmology and all that stuff.
For whom?
Book publishers.
He writes books.
Yeah. He used to write art journalism, but I think now he just writes books. But I might be wrong.
Why do we need to go after Gribbin then?
You could sort it out.
Sort what out?
Well, you went after Gribbin. You're asking me. You were the one. I didn't say Gribbin.
I've never communicated with Gribbin.
No, but you said to Jeremy Webb. The reason that's in that thing, Jeremy Webb said. You said Jeremy Webb. There's 4 guys who control New Scientist: Gribbin, Hawking, Penrose, and Davies. And then you let the genie out the bag there, because then Webb came back and he put denials that he had any of those people control the New Scientist. He claimed he was his own man. He claimed that Penrose and Hawking were well regarded among their peers, but they didn't actually control them. Even though he was so impressed with them, he refused to publish anything critical of them. And then he said that Davies, I don't know what he said about Davies, he said that Davies writes about religion nowadays, so he doesn't matter. And he said, what else did he say? He said that, Gribbin, he said Gribbin hasn't written for us for 8 years. So Gribbin is responsible for New Scientist editorial policy today, despite Gribbin having written in every issue of New Scientist in the 1980s, and up to about 1996 or something. So Gribbin is exonerated because he drops out of the circle 8 years ago. Dr. Walton.
Is it working all right?
Yes. I haven't.
Do you want to film Libra as well? You've got a camera on there.
Oh yeah, what is that?
You want to be famous?
Oh, not now.
No. She was famous last week, wasn't you?
What about tea or something?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, she was very famous last week and the week before, weren't you? Doesn't need it. Okay, anyway, the problem is, thanks for this, first I knew about it, I need that email, and I just add a thing. If he's not a journalist, then he doesn't...
Well, he's a book journalist.
There's no point in telling him there's good copy out of that website of mine.
Well, unless he writes a book about the cat anomaly, or the cat question, sorry.
Thank you.
You can write a book about it.
Yeah, you've been misnaming it lately. You're as bad as the...
Well,
I'm not allowed to rename my stuff.
If you rename stuff every 5 minutes, then who can keep track of...
The cat anomaly implies I think there's an anomaly, but now I say no, I accept classical theory is perfect. So I can't call a thing the cat anomaly. I just want instruction from these luminaries on the perfect theory, which...
Well, that makes it worse. It's a bit like if you tell a joke about someone, like Hawking or Penrose, instead of people laughing, they say, that's disgusting, no one laughs. You tell a joke, and it's a funny joke, and no one laughs. And it turns out it's not a joke really to them. It's an insult. I mean, there's this thing in comedy, I don't know, the Monty Python thing, I think it starts off with, you can't, what is the definition of a joke? Well, the definition of a joke is an insult to someone, basically. If you tell any joke, any good joke, it's going to offend someone.
History. And then I'd accumulated 2 more people who were attracted to electromagnetic theory. One was Malcolm Davidson.
We next come to a series of papers published in The Electrician between the autumn of 1882 and the autumn of 1887, when under the editorship of Mr. C.H.W. Biggs, to whom I desire to express my obligations for the opportunity he gave me of exercising my philanthropic inclinations, in the face, as I afterwards learnt, of considerable opposition. These papers extend to over about 500 pages, mostly in this, mostly in the second volume. Mostly in this and partly in the second volume, and are usually long articles with continuity. They relate to just again. This is the book I've been quoting from is Oliver Heaviside, Electrical Papers in 2 volumes. This is volume 1, London, Macmillan and Co. London and New York, 1892. All rights reserved. Volume 1, Electrical Papers. On page 516, he gives he states in brief. Let's see if I can get the camera on it. Okay, he says in brief, the full statement of the conditions is contained in B equals mu h, diff B equals 0. It's the key Maxwell equation. It's the one which is probably Heaviside's own unique contribution to the whole thing. Diff B equals 0. The divergences of the 2 poles of a magnet always cancel out when you take the total divergence. That's absolutely key Maxwell equation that of course Feynman attributes it to Maxwell, whereas I think it's really Heviside's. But big page there, so that's Oliver Heaviside, the picture of the guy. If it will come out. The magnetism. This is Maxwell's treatise, and this is the diagram, the big error in Maxwell's treatise for a light wave. This is volume 1 of Maxwell's treatise on electricity and magnetism. This tripod's useless too. It's the problem. You need to get a big film crew in here with enormous cameras. And then
can I talk for quite a long time?
Yeah.
I can. You sure?
Yeah, about half an hour, I think.
Is that all?
Well, until it runs out. I did a bit on it, reading out bits from Heaviside, just while I was waiting for you. So, I can change tapes. I'm doing it on tape. I've got about 6 tapes.
I think what's coming is good. You see.
Yeah.
So Ivor Catt was at the forefront of high-speed logic. He was hired into Motorola in 1964. One of the dates, by the way, round about here is wrong in an article published by me in Electronics World a year ago. I think I say 62 instead of 64 or something like that. But I went to Motorola, I went to America in 62, 63 on the turn of the years, December 31st. And then I was a year and a half in Los Angeles. It takes me up to 64. Then so I arrived at Motorola 64 because Motorola were concerned that they were making the fastest logic and they needed an expert on interconnecting it. And money was flowing in to get good Americans, freedom-loving Americans, to the moon, which was a difficult problem. To go across our computer systems was 5-10 times longer than to get through a gate. So we were heading for a crisis, possibly, in interference between signals. And so I did all the work, but that doesn't mean that 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, I was kosher and could publish in that field, because the referees of all the journals were good radio men who'd run away from industry decades before digital electronics was significant, you see, so they didn't understand what I was writing, and they recommended don't publish. But all the same, I did publish everything I wanted to publish for 12 years. But I didn't publish the dangerous stuff. But my main one was in the IEEE transactions computers called Crosstalk, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
1964, I think it is.
Wasn't that... Oh, right.
No, 1967.
Yeah,
even that was political, and it was delayed 3 years because it was an advance in electromagnetic theory, and you were not allowed to make advances because it turned out that digital was where the advances were, not analog. And the predecessor to me was Heaviside, who sent pulses down a cable from Newcastle to Denmark, and he was advancing the art, the sacred or arcane subject to electromagnetic theory. Then from my point of view, no progress was made for more than half a century until I was sending pulses across a logic board, which is Heaviside's problem scaled down in size and speed, and you go up in speed, so you go down in size, and this problem's the same. But that had not been a problem throughout the wireless television and also radar era, because radar is analog. It is not digital. Radar pulse is not a pulse. It's a series of sine waves. And so the referees and the editors of the journals came out of that stable and were terrified of what I was saying. But remember, Heaviside didn't really think it was two things necessarily, because he came up with the pointing vector independently of pointing, E cross H, you see. Now, I'm saying that Heaviside there is comparing and contrasting the I and the V, which is what happens in the wire and between the wires, with the E and the H. And he says we reverse this. Now, only twice in Heaviside's 5 volumes does he mention energy current. This is important. His great contribution was the phrase energy current. You move away from electric current, which is what flows down the wires, to energy current, which is like the train going to Edinburgh, is guided by the wire. Leave it now. So, what I was supposed to talk about was 1976. Now, 1976 was the great breakthrough when I knew I was big. And this was obviously my greatest achievement in my whole life. You see an introduction by Dave Walton, my co-author Dave Walton, my co-author in other books. I think Ivor's own words recorded at the time are the best history of what happened next. Then one night, 28th of May 1976, which Ivor today says he thinks should read 26th of May 1976, and the book where I recorded everything that happened and got co-signatures, because when you make a breakthrough you should write it down and get someone else to co-sign it with the date, and it was co-signed by Davidson. But where's the book gone now? I think will say 26th of May 76. Then one night, as was his wont, Walton phoned Catt and talked about a number of things. How he knew he should get the sine wave out of his conceptual system, but how difficult it was to do so. How he wondered how the particle came into Faraday's law of induction. That perhaps the law was only an approximation and did not hold exactly at the atomic level. Catt wanted no particles introduced into the argument. Then Walton raised the point about a Faraday's law loop. You have a loop of wire with a capacitor as part of the loop. Catt said that if instead of a C you had the end of a very long 50 ohm transmission line, it would look just like a resistor. Walton said, so that gets rid of displacement current. That was Walton making the first big step, was to say displacement current doesn't exist. But it isn't, is it? It's just a mention of displacement current, isn't it? Okay, now I believe that's 26th of May 76. And the Catt then went into work, what we call work, which was, you couldn't work in that company, it was GC, you earned your living, your salary, but thereby hangs a tale. I've written about GC, and GC imploded later. But anyway, and went and told Davidson, and then the next day, Catt suddenly said, then there's no electric current. And that was 27th of May 1976. Should be. But according to this, if this date's right, it would be 29th of May, which was then suppressed, and continued suppressed in the year 2004, which is how long after? 28 years later. Nobody knows that.
What sort of you predicted at that time? You envisaged some suppression. What sort of suppression did you expect to get, and did it compare with what you expected, or was it worse or better? Or
no, well, at the beginning, you assume that something will be censored for 10 years or 20 years. I mean, I suppose after about 10 years, I thought it was likely to disappear from the record, because you were not allowed to record it, let alone communicate it. In our culture, then you were not even allowed to register. So that's why when the Catt invention, which is entirely different from this, I'm talking discovery.
You're talking the Kennel machine? Or
long before that, Catt spiral.
Spiral.
Catt got a patron in government for Spiral, which later on pulled in £12 million.
It's Clive Sinclair's.
But his patron was E.A. Newman.
Right.
And E.A. Newman happened to have as a very good friend, the deputy head of British Library. So Catt brought the other two down to E.A. Newman in National Physical Laboratory to say, could he get us a quarter of an inch of shelf space in the British Library so as what we discovered would be saved?
Yeah.
Because we could not publish, we could not record it. And E.A. Newman, my patron, who'd risked his whole career to back Catt's invention, refused to admit that he understood what we were asking for. It's so frightening to aid someone to record heresy, even if you've risked your career backing his invention. Absolutely incredible. Then, of course, you begin to realise how medieval our society is. Yeah. Anyway, so 1976, and remember that I'd already been censored over the glitch. I managed to publish the glitch by giving it a misleading title in 1966 in the IE transaction on computers. Time lost through gating of asynchronous logic signal pulses. It had a meaningless title, so as people wouldn't realise that it was speaking heresy, you see. And my major paper on electromagnetic theory, that's Crosstalk, 1967 in the IEEE transaction on computers, now on the World Wide Web. Well, most of it. For instance, the book, which gives a summary of it, is at www.ivorcatt.org. It shows the photographs of the actual crosstalk, which Nigel seems to dispute. He thinks I didn't have right.
Well, I just say there's energy going between the two. You've got Heaviside simpler model where Heaviside just has a slab of energy current and doesn't worry about whether there's energy going from one conductor to another or how it physically exists between two conductors. Whereas it's obviously as you go away from one wire, the field strength goes down as the inverse square or something. So it's going to get weaker in the gap. So you don't go into what's happening in the ether, nor does Heaviside. Or Heaviside does it a bit, doesn't he? But he doesn't really get anywhere, does he? Like the ether.
Do you mind if I don't answer that?
Okay.
Because you're paddling in deep waters there. Anyway, now, well, not paddling, you're struggling or drowning or I don't know what.
Well, the ether.
Yeah, you can drag me down to the bottom of the ocean with you if you like, and let people see it on a recording.
Okay, I'll just read out one sentence. Evolution of Physics by Einstein and Infield, published 1938, Cambridge University Press. It's Evolution of Physics, the growth of ideas from early concepts to relativity and quantum. Just one sentence. This is page 184. The one sentence is, looking back at the development of physics, we see that the ether, soon after its birth, became the infant terrible of the family of physical substances. He then goes on to say that it's the ether, firstly, the construction of a simple mechanical picture of the ether proved to be impossible and was discarded. This caused to a great extent the breakdown of the mechanical point of view. Secondly, we have to give up the hope that through the presence of the ether C, 1CS, coordinate system, I think he means, will be distinguished and lead to the recognition of absolute and not relative motion. And that's what Einstein says.
No, I didn't grasp the last two sentences.
Good, that's 184. I'll just read it again. 184.
What year was this published?
19. I just told you.
He was trying to get at you out of Germany.
1938.
He's trying to get Infield out of Germany, you said.
Yeah, he's trying to get Leopold out of Germany.
Just read the last two
to get him into America.
Please.
And
last
page 184.
Yeah.
Looking back at the development of physics, we see that the ether, soon after its birth, became the enfant terrible.
Enfant terrible.
French pronunciation of the family of physical substances. First, the construction of a simple mechanical picture of the ether proved to be impossible and was discarded. This caused, to a great extent, the breakdown of the mechanical point of view. Second, we had to give up hope that through the presence of the ether C, 1CS coordinate system would be distinguished and lead to the recognition of absolute and not only relative motion. But then he goes on a bit later on the same page. He says, after such bad experiences, this is the moment to forget the ether completely and to try never to mention its name. we shall say our space has the physical property of transmitting waves, and so omit the use of a word we have decided to avoid. The omission of a word from our vocabulary is, of course, no remedy. The troubles, this is on page 185 now, the troubles are indeed much too profound to be solved in this way. Let us now write down the facts which have been sufficiently confirmed by experiment, without bothering any more about the, and he's got quotes, and he's got E, and then space, and then R, close quotes, problem. And then he goes on about relativity. Yeah.
I mean, it would be most unfortunate if at the Council of Nicaea, in let's say 380 AD, Jesus had still been alive, because then you could not have formulated the dogma of Christianity without interference. The big problem for modern physics is the Jesus of it, the Einstein, was still alive, and he did not come quietly. And so the fact that he didn't go along with all this gobbledygook that was being brewed up as the new state religion, which is modern physics, had to be suppressed. So Einstein was suppressed. But what you find is if you read something book like Einstein, written by French or edited by French, he says that one of the guys at the Solvay Conference, because I generally say the Solvay Conference, which is the Council of Nicaea in the case of Christianity, in the case of modern physics, it's the Solvay Conference in Brussels. But again, unfortunately, like Council of Nicaea, there was more than one. So you can't just say the Solvay Conference.
1927.
No, but there was more than one. But I tend to say 1927, where everyone was. So everybody was assembled to formulate, Madame Curie and Einstein, Heisenberg,
Planck.
Yeah. They were all put together to formulate a new dogma, which would generate the careers and the PhDs and the Nobel Prizes and the funding.
And that was Solvay. Solvay was this industrial...
I think Solvay's the man who made, the Belgian who made a lot of money out of the Bessemer converter or something like that.
Right.
I'm not sure, but surely that was Bessemer who made that money, so I'm not sure about that. But he was an industrialist. And he was buried in this money. So he said, what do I do? I won't build a palace, or I haven't spent enough on my palace or whatever. So he said, I'll collect all the big names in what was becoming to call modern physics, which was the reaction against 19th century physics. And but then in this book, something like Einstein, and is it edited by French or written by French?
Einstein, philosopher, scientist.
No, that's Schilt.
Oh, right, sorry.
No, this is French. Now, I found it in the, what's that big university next to the Albert Hall? Imperial College Library. Yeah. And in there you got one of the guys who attended the Solvay Conference. It's beginning with S. There's more than one. There's Schrödinger and there's also somebody else. But one of them is on the station in Paris, and Einstein walks by and he confesses to Einstein he's not happy with some of this dogma. And Einstein says, you keep at it, you keep fighting.
Right.
Now there's another one who sort of 40 years later said he only had to go along with this stuff because that's where the careers were. Yeah. You see, so there was a lot of dragooning. Now, of course, in the Council of Nicaea, some of the bishops, decades later, said, well, we didn't agree with the new dogma, but we had to pretend to agree, because if you disagree with any clause of the Nicene Creed, Council of Nicaea, Nicene Creed, you were excommunicated.
And that was Tertullian and St. Ambrose and people like that.
Maybe. The trouble is 2 or 3 of them have the same name. 2 or 3 of the great men in Christianity.
Pope Innocent was one of them.
No, I don't mean that. No, earlier than that. In 300 AD. You say, I've got a hang of them now. And then you find there's one who lived somewhere in Asia Minor, in Turkey. He's the one who decades later said, I didn't agree with it, but I had to go along with it. So the same thing happened in Christianity. And by the way, we do know the Council of Nicaea, the Nicene Creed, is not a thing that distinguishes between Christians and pagans. It's the thing that distinguishes between Christian and Christian. Emperor Constantine said, for a state religion, you have to all sing from the same hymn book. Now, before Constantine, it wasn't a state religion, and you could have your own gnosis, and God could tell you more. Because God But by now, God had to have told you everything in the Bible, and you move towards the idea that the Bible is the Word of God. And anything new...
The edited version of the Bible, the one they choose.
And well, because there were 12 Gospels, so they had to get rid of 8 in order to get more consistency. But anyway, and the trouble is, of course, even in one of those, when Jesus comes back from the dead, he first says hello to a woman, and we were trying to get a patriarchal religion, and the first, and it's of enormous symbolic significance, and Jesus shouldn't be messing around with a woman. I mean, he's all powerful, so he could turn into a ghost and bypass her. You see, so and all these inconsistencies, like feeding of the 5,000 or feeding the 200, are still in there. You see, and of course for that if you want to go that way, you read Thomas L. Thompson, The Bible in History, something like 2002. But anyway, what's so irritating is when I go to leading theologians today and saying, if you're trying to get a full grasp of the attitude of the Pope and of Galileo and all those in the Middle Ages, I can introduce you to them, because this is Pepper and the editor of New Scientist, and it's the same thing, and the theologians refuse to go and meet, so they spend decades studying theology, and they won't go and meet St. Ambrose and Saint that and Saint the other and see and study them. You see, it's so frustrating. I went to see Eric James and said, I can introduce you to the bishops and to the dissidents and the monks in the time of Galileo, and he insisted on believing that I was trying to get him to raise funding for an invention of mine, which later gained 12 million. But the point is, how the hell can you be telling a theologian, I'll introduce you to all those medieval characters? That's a bit too subtle for Catt, that really you're trying to get him to raise funding for your invention. That's true. He's dead now, so and I'm sorry about that, but I was saying that before he died. But I don't think I ever went for it. Yes, I did. Years later, I said, you insisted on thinking I wasn't talking about you doing the real theology. Anyway, where was I? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I've lost it.
Well, the Ether and the Einstein.
Oh, well, you see, they have the Council of Nicaea. Now, the point. Now, it's difficult to see why this industrialist, whose presumably name is Solvay, wanted to stabilize modern physics in the same way as the Emperor Constantine wanted to stabilize and dogmatize Christianity. I don't know that part of it, but certainly the dogma or the creed was formulated there, and if you didn't go along with all of it, you were out. And people like Bourne got a professorship in Edinburgh. Well, he wouldn't have got it if he disagreed with uncertainty principle or what are the various ones? You know, quantum. The Bohr atom for the model for the atom, because by then you see Heisenberg and Bohr had thrashed out their disagreements, and come together and got a sort of a story cobbled together. Then Solvay gets them in, and all the other people like Madame Curie, who had some photographic material in a cupboard ruined, and so discovered radioactivity.
Becquerel, she made the radium, isolated radium and radium.
Yeah, all these people, you get them all together, and you've got to formulate the dogma. And the dogma is modern physics, and it's also called the Copenhagen interpretation. You know, which is what
correspondence and what's the other one?
No, I don't think you should then say it's the correspondence principle and the principle of complementarity. I mean, I don't like that, but maybe you're right. You know, I've never thought that way, so I'd rather avoid that point, that it is correspondence principle and principle of complementarity, which of course everybody like me tend to confuse because the words are too similar. Anyway, so is that dealt with that if you look, you'll find that there wasn't only one dissident in our Jesus, you know, at Nicaea. A lot of the bishops, well, Jesus died first, so it was easier to handle. A lot of the bishops at the Solvay conference were unhappy about what was happening, but they went along with it, you see. And that's what we're saddled with now. Because, you see, not long after, Catt's researching high-speed logic. Well, why should that map onto a compromise that's been cobbled together 50 years before.
Yeah.
By people who've written equations about how to build an atom bomb, you know. It's nothing to do with it, because I was doing practical stuff, interconnecting high-speed logic, and the people in that tradition can suppress me and proceed to suppress me. The more they suppress me, the more advanced I got compared with anybody else. So I'm now what's called a historical object, with virtually nobody has any grasp of what I'm saying. Now, because we should be starting with a primitive level.
Right.
And I say, you're standing by two wires, watching what goes by, right? And you know all you know is Faraday's law of induction. This is theory N.
Yeah.
Faraday's law of induction, the normal theory before Heaviside reversal, and the conservation of charge.
Yeah.
Then what you find is anything that goes by must go at a fixed velocity, only one velocity, and only one possible ratio of voltage to current.
Yeah.
So then anything that goes by must be built up out of those building blocks. Right?
Yep.
So if you have a pulse, by the way, it's a minimal width slab of stuff going by, and you can show that it's got one voltage current ratio and one velocity.
Yeah.
It's an extremely restrictive environment. So if the battery wants to dump something there, it's got to dump something of a certain character. The only way it can be varied, given the geometry of the guiding wires, and it's easy if they're two flat plates. Well, actually a coax with the inner very, very big, so there's very little distance, is nearly as good as two flat plates. So in your mind you must alternate between two flat plates, which go out to the side to ever, to two flat plates which close in on themselves, right? Now two flat plates, if they're closing in on themselves, if you look at a small section, it looks very much like flat rather than curved, you see. So that's what you home in on. At that point you say, do I know Faraday's law? Do I know the law of conservation of charge? If I know those, then only one thing can pass, by which I mean stuff can only pass me at one velocity, and the voltage to the current ratio is fixed. Now one of those we call the characteristic impedance. Now of course I go further, not one thing, two things, because it can be plus C or minus sensitivity.
Yeah, just for the benefit of people listening, you're saying, you see, what you saw that electricity is actually light,
and I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
Going past me at the speed of light, not changing.
Yeah.
If it's a sine wave, the sine wave did not wiggle.
Yeah.
And this is the point. If you take a sine wave on a piece of board and you move the piece, a drawing, look, drawing of a sine wave, and you move, it looks as though it's wiggling if you hide the two ends, but it's not wiggling. That's the point. And so they drifted into what I call in my article the Heaviside signal in wireless world in, say, something like 1980. The Heaviside signal, that's called the rolling wave.
Yeah.
Where the voltage, the electric field causes the magnetic field causes the electric field, which was the kind that Hertz came up with, you see.
Well, Maxwell.
Well, all of them. The changing electric field causes the magnetic field, changing magnetic field causes, and that's consonant with Einstein saying it's absurd to have this thing wiggling in space.
Yeah, so that's the Einstein.
But now, if you draw a sine wave on a piece of paper and you move it along, if you run alongside it, you'll see a stationary. In Einstein's time, you'll see a stationary oscillation in space, won't you? If you stand still, it'll wiggle if you don't look at too much of it.
Yeah.
But there was no wiggling, and that's what I call the Heaviside signal. Is the one where you say it's a stationary. Don't call it oscillation. A stationary waveform moving forward at the speed of light. Now, if you go back to the observer, the one eye, looking at a pair of wires and watching something go by. Don't worry about the source. Don't worry about the destination. You shouldn't have to. If you're in the middle of the ocean, you should be able to study the behavior of water to some degree just looking at 10 square yards of water. You shouldn't have to say, who caused the waves, where did it break on the shore, and all that stuff. You see, you should be able to, and that's what I did, and that's the breakthrough. Because when that guy looks at that stuff passing, he says, at every point, E and H should be in a fixed proportion, 377, and E to H must not change. Now, if the relationship doesn't change, you can't have rolling.
Yeah. So that does away with Maxwell's theory of light.
Well,
it does away with the role of
we don't know Maxwell's theory of light, do we? I mean, he only conjectured, didn't he?
Well,
you see, Hertz got one of the things to wobble at one end of the room, let's say the electric field, and then over the other end of the... Pardon?
He was radio though. He had 2 capacitor plates, and he called them radio aerials. And he was sending a signal between 2 plates. So.
But see, what's underlying the misunderstanding is people go and look at the sea and things like that. They look at sound. And why?
Well,
why should electromagnetic transmission in the ether behave the same as sound which is in air?
Precisely, yeah.
You know, why impose? Because, and obviously, and of course, more so if they've got rid of the ether. There isn't even the ether for the stuff to, roll and E causes H causes E causes H. The whole thing's just absurd.
But they had a particle field ether, didn't they? And you're more towards sort of.
No, wait a minute. No.
No.
When you come through the traditional route, you have, for instance, Einstein said when he pursues a beam of light, it would look like a stationary oscillator. When he was 14, he would not have particles then.
No.
So he said it's absurd for that thing moving forward to be stationary, and it's a wave. You see, presumably thinks, well, how could it propagate and stuff like that? But really, you could say it's a force fit to try and get into the psyche the idea that there's no absolute frame of reference, right? Which is totally the opposite from me, because I say, does he have the principle of conservation of energy? If you have the principle of conservation energy, energy must know where it is. The trouble is they're all hopelessly entangled with the observer. And I'm saying the observer is fine. You go and observe a bit to try and find out a bit about physical reality, but you don't let him. You don't say that if there's no observer there, nothing is happening. You say you have an eye looking at this stuff travelling down between 2 wires, and you see it, or you to some extent you see it, and then you say on that basis you deduce what must be there.
Yeah.
And that's what we always do when we look with our eyes, and I see that curtain. I deduce that there's a curtain there.
Right.
I say not that I say I'm certain there's a curtain there. I say I have a hypothesis that the curtain's there. Now, I might be totally deluded, but I do have a hypothesis. And what you do in science is you continue to hone more and more with more experiments. Because, you see, in Galileo's time, your first defence was to say you'd never heard of Galileo. Your next defence was you'd never written anything but read anything but written by him. That's the point. You see, in a healthy society, even if Cat was crackpot, if there's free wine, free food, at least people could dare to go and drink the wine and eat the food, but they won't do that.
No.
You see, and that's the kind of test you got to have on how deep we've sunk back into the medieval society. This is an extremely dangerous society. These guys are really frightened. And Nigel Cook, who's sitting in front of me, hiding behind the camera, is has got the original text of The Emperor's No Clothes, which is extremely more apposite than I thought it was. Everybody's frightened of across an increasing spectrum of science, fundamental science, aren't they? Because they fear that either they're stupid or there's fundamental flaws, but everybody else is pretending the emperor is well dressed. You see, but occasionally it flashes out like Lynn Trainer, professor of that kind of thing at the University of something or other in Canada, says most of what's written in modern physics is bunk. So you get that kind of thing. But other people interpret that as meaning the great humility of modern physicists. Did you notice that? You say, oh, they're marvellous. They even question their own their own discoveries, you see. I mean, you can't get out of this jam, you see. So that's finished, is it?
Yep, that tape's just about finished.
Well, we'll try and get back to the party now.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Are you okay? Do you want to...